Beneath the calm blue waters of the Pacific Ocean lies a graveyard, a silent world of twisted steel and shattered pride. Here, far below the waves, sleep the giants that once ruled the seas, Japan's aircraft carriers. Once symbols of imperial power and unshakable ambition, now resting as ghostly airfields beneath the sea. This is the story of how Japan's most powerful carriers, the pride of the Imperial Navy, met their fate, and how, decades later, divers and historians uncovered their resting places, frozen in time, hidden beneath the ocean's dark embrace. The rise of Japan's naval air power. In the early 1930s, the Japanese Empire looked eastward across the Pacific. The nation's military leaders knew that to dominate the seas, they would need a new kind of weapon. Not just battleships, but carriers, floating airfields capable of projecting power across thousands of miles. From this vision rose ships like Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shōkaku, and Zuikaku. Each one a masterpiece of engineering and precision. Together they formed the beating heart of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the Kaido Butai, the Mobile Strike Force. A weapon unlike any the world had ever seen. When these ships sailed, they carried with them hundreds of aircraft, elite pilots, and the confidence of an empire that believed it was unstoppable. The Day of Infamy. On December 7, 1941, the carriers of the Kaido Butai unleashed their fury upon Pearl Harbor. From the decks of Akagi and Kaga, waves of aircraft roared into the morning sky, Zero fighters, Kate torpedo bombers, and Val dive bombers. Their mission, to cripple the United States Pacific Fleet before it could ever fight back. The attack was devastating. In just 2 hours, battleships burned, airfields were destroyed, and more than 2,400 Americans were killed. Japan had achieved total surprise. Across the empire, cheers erupted. The carrier fleet had brought glory to Japan. But that glory would not last. The turning tide. Only 6 months later, those same carriers would sail toward a new battle, one that would change history forever. Their destination, a small, remote atoll in the middle of the Pacific called Midway. In June 1942, Japan launched an ambitious plan to lure the remaining American carriers into a trap. But thanks to American codebreakers, the U.S. Navy knew exactly where and when the Japanese would strike. As the battle began, the Japanese carriers launched air attacks against Midway Island. Their decks were busy rearming and refueling planes when the U.S. dive bombers appeared out of the clouds. Within minutes, the fate of an empire was sealed. The day the empire's wings burned. The first bomb struck Kaga. Explosions tore through her hangar decks, igniting fuel and munitions. In moments, she became an inferno. Then Akagi was hit, a single bomb piercing her flight deck and detonating below, dooming the flagship of the Kaido Butai. Soryu and Hiryu followed soon after, each consumed by flames. 4 carriers, the core of Japan's naval air power, were lost in a single day. Over 3,000 sailors and aviators perished. Japan would never fully recover. The once mighty fleet was now scattered, and the tide of war began to turn. Beneath the waves. For decades, the final resting places of these carriers were unknown. They vanished into the depths of the Pacific, hundreds of miles northwest of Midway Atoll. Sailors who survived spoke of the ships burning until their hulls glowed red, slipping beneath the waves with the rising sun. Then silence. It wasn't until 77 years later that modern exploration vessels, using deep-sea submersibles and sonar mapping, rediscovered them. In 2019, the research vessel Petrel, funded by the late Paul Allen, scanned the seafloor near Midway. At a depth of over 5,400 meters, the sonar image appeared massive, unmistakable. It was Kaga. Soon after, the team located Akagi, resting upright on the ocean floor, her bow twisted but recognizable, her flight deck eerily intact. The ghosts of Midway had been found. The silent fleet. Cameras revealed haunting images. Aircraft elevators frozen mid-rise. Flight decks torn open like wounds. Anti-aircraft guns still aimed skyward, as if waiting for an attack that would never come. And on the bridge, instruments remained corroded, but untouched for almost 80 years. Every frame told a story of chaos, fire, and courage. The crews who once manned these ships went down with them, following the ancient code of the Imperial Navy. For Japan, these wrecks are more than relics. They are war graves, sacred sites where thousands of souls remain entombed beneath the sea. The legacy of the carriers. The loss of the WWII marked a turning point in the Pacific War. After Midway, Japan no longer had the means to replace its trained pilots and carrier decks. America, on the other hand, launched carriers faster than Japan could sink them. From 1943 onward, Japan's naval power faded. By the end of the war, the once dominant fleet was reduced to scattered ships and desperation missions. Yet beneath the waves, the spirit of those lost carriers endures silent reminders of ambition, innovation, and tragedy. Each rusted beam tells a story of men who believed they could rule the skies, and of a nation that learned too late that pride alone cannot win a war. But our story does not end here. Because far from Midway, in the hidden lagoons of Micronesia, another ghost fleet sleeps. Hundreds of ships, planes, and carriers, sealed beneath the sea since the final days of Japan's empire. Far from the coral reefs of Midway, deep in the western Pacific, lies another world forgotten by time. It is known today as Truk Lagoon or Truk Lagoon, a place of haunting beauty and terrible silence. Beneath its tranquil blue waters rests the shattered heart of the Imperial Japanese Navy. A ghost fleet so vast and complete, it has been called the underwater Pearl Harbor. This is where Japan's Pacific ambitions came to die. During the height of the Second World War, Truk Lagoon served as Japan's largest forward base, a natural fortress surrounded by coral, protected by mountains, and hidden in the vastness of the Pacific Ocean. From here, Japan launched its carriers, cruisers, and submarines to dominate the seas. It was a bustling naval city, filled with shipyards, supply depots, repair docks, and airstrips. For years, it was untouchable, the beating heart of Japan's Pacific operations. But by early 1944, the empire's fortunes had turned. After defeats at Midway and the Solomons, Japan's once mighty navy was retreating, while American forces drew ever closer. And so, in February 1944, the U.S. Navy prepared to strike the heart of Japan's Pacific stronghold. They called it Operation Hailstone. In the dark hours before dawn on February 17, 1944, waves of American carrier aircraft rose into the night sky. From decks aboard Enterprise, Essex, Yorktown, and others, nearly 500 planes took off, flying low across the ocean toward Truk. Their mission was clear: destroy everything. When the first bombs fell, chaos consumed the lagoon. Japanese ships scattered, anti-aircraft guns erupted, and fuel depots exploded in towering columns of fire. Carriers, cruisers, destroyers, and freighters, dozens of them tried to flee, but few escaped. In just 2 days, over 40 ships and more than 250 aircraft were destroyed. Among them were fleet carriers, submarines, and transports loaded with munitions and fuel. The sky above Truk turned black with smoke as explosions rolled across the lagoon. The once proud base was left burning, broken, and abandoned. The Japanese Navy would never again recover its reach across the Pacific. The fortress of Truk had become a tomb. Today, those wrecks remain preserved by the sea, untouched for decades. Cargo holds still filled with tanks, trucks, ammunition and torpedoes. Aircraft lie scattered across the seabed, their wings still bearing the faded red Hinamaru of the rising sun. In the eerie stillness, coral and sea life have claimed them, nature's slow tribute to the fallen. Divers who descend into these depths describe the feeling as stepping into another world. Inside the sunken carriers, machine guns still point toward the sky. Helmets, tools, and boots lie scattered across the decks. In some cabins, teacups remain on shelves, perfectly preserved in silt. The silence is total, broken only by the soft crackle of air bubbles and the distant hum of the sea. What was once a symbol of war has become an underwater cathedral of memory. Among the most haunting discoveries is the carrier Shōkaku, sister ship of the great Zuikaku. She survived Midway and fought in nearly every major battle afterward, including the Coral Sea and Santa Cruz. But in 1944, she met her end in the Philippine Sea, torpedoed by an American submarine. When divers later found her wreck at a depth of over 1,200 feet, she was perfectly preserved. Aircraft still chained to her hangar, flight deck collapsed in on itself, her final mission forever frozen in time. Nearby lies Zuikaku, the last surviving carrier from Pearl Harbor. She fought until the end, leading a decoy force at the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Surrounded and overwhelmed, she took multiple torpedo hits before capsizing and sinking with over 800 men still aboard. She rests now in darkness, another ghost beneath the waves. Each of these ships tells the same story, of courage, sacrifice, and the inevitable collapse of an empire that had reached too far. Truk Lagoon today is one of the most famous diving sites in the world. For historians, it is a time capsule, a frozen record of Japan's final days at sea. For divers, it is both breathtaking and sacred. Each descent reveals not only relics of war, but human lives paused in their final moments. Cameras capture eerie images of aircraft still parked on hangar decks, and of Zero fighters lying in the sand, their propellers motionless. Inside the holds of the transport Fujikawa Maru, the remains of aircraft engines, trucks, and motorcycles still rest, silent witnesses to the scale of Japan's war machine. Even now, unexploded bombs lie undisturbed, their fuses corroded but intact, reminders that the past is never truly gone. The lagoon is not just a dive site. It is a memorial, a place where the ghosts of sailors and aviators still linger beneath the waves. For Japan, these wrecks represent loss, not just of ships and planes, but of dreams. Each twisted hull marks the end of an era when Japan sought to rule the Pacific. And yet, within this destruction lies a strange kind of beauty. The coral reefs have turned the wrecks into thriving ecosystems, where life grows from death. Nature has reclaimed what war once consumed. Through the lens of history, the story of Japan's ghost carriers is not merely about defeat. It is about transformation, a journey from pride to ruin, and finally to peace beneath the sea. Today, as the sun sets over Truk Lagoon, the water glows with golden light. Beneath that surface, the carriers still sleep, Akagi, Kaga, Shōkaku, Zuikaku, and countless others. Once they carried the dreams of empire. Now they carry silence. The ocean remembers what men forget. And in its depths, history endures not written in words, but in rust, coral, and the stillness of the sea. These are Japan's ghost carriers, the hidden airfields beneath the sea, the final echoes of a vanished empire.